And in 3, 2, 1.
You are now listening to the Lapsed Graps podcast.
Hello and welcome to the first ever episode 14 of Lapsed Graps, a podcast where I, Sam, a person who watches pro wrestling, sit down with my friend
Jam, who doesn't?
and we discuss the wacky week that was in professional wrestling. There's only one news piece this week, and it kind of ties, well, it doesn't kind of, it directly ties into the wrestling that we're going to cover throughout the week, but it's huge, and I figured it was important. Impact Wrestling announced on Wednesday, or actually this morning, around the time that the AEW and NXT ratings were released, that they had more than 750,000 fan interactions tuned to Access TV, and Twitch channel and YouTube live streams on December 8th for the Kenny Omega appearance episode. That's the most in the history of the company, even back to the TNA days when they were on Spike and on TNT. So that's huge, and round of applause to them. That's awesome. They topped out that I saw on Twitch at like 75,000 people logged into their Twitch stream, which on a normal Tuesday night for Impact on Twitch, it's like 3,000 to 5,000. So that was insane. And as much crap as Impact tends to get for their production quality and putting things on with like their pay-per-views going kind of wonky and just things getting miscued, the stream never dropped, the stream never lagged. I don't know if that's more of a bravo to Twitch for being able to handle that kind of influx of people, or if that's a bravo to Impact itself directly. So either way, that was an incredible Tuesday night, and just watching all of these people pour in and actually stick around for the full episode and watch some really, really good wrestling. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Like, I'm not a huge numbers guy as far as like understanding what numbers mean, but I know enough to know that them getting that many numbers, that's even bigger than even when they were on TV. That's huge, and goes back to what we were saying last week about the beauty of a relationship like this. Just everybody wins. That was bolster up Impact. AEW looks good by working with the low guy, makes the low guy look like a big guy or even become a big guy from the sounds of it. So it's all good things across the board. Very happy for Impact.
Absolutely, and that's a huge like selling point to Access TV, who they are on now, because when they came in and started streaming through Access TV directly on cable providers, they actually like bumped New Japan off the network. Like New Japan had a cut down like 40-minute US based program based off their most recent pay-per-view or their like weekly traveling like shows that they would do and upload to their private network themselves for like 3 or 4 hours. They would have like a broken down bit that would go on Access TV, and when Impact came in, they actually bumped them off the network. So them being able to say, look, we bumped these guys off the network and they were very popular for you in this time slot, but these are the numbers we're doing now when we're given the opportunity to have the creative freedom to go and bring in interesting people to do cool stuff. So it's a very cool moment in wrestling history that's going to be like referenced back for years and years to come when the eventual Impact full compendium from their birth to their death to their birth again to the death again and whatever it is, book that someone's going to write in 15-20 years. This is going to be a significant chapter of that book.
1000%. I just hope that seeing the early success of this partnership encourages other companies to just work together.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's one where we've had rumors throughout the week that this was a one-off thing, that Kenny just showed up on Impact the one time, and that the Good Brothers are going to just show up on AEW one time, and that's going to be the end of it. Hopefully, both companies took a look at these numbers and the social engagement and decide to, if not work directly with one another, at least keep that door open to let that kind of free flow of talent continue.
Agreed. We I guess I'm jumping ahead a little bit by asking, but since you brought it up, did the Good Brothers pop up on AEW?
Not this week. They're supposed to come in in a little while, but they didn't rock up this week. We did have some guest appearances on AEW that you are going to be very excited for. Some continuations of storylines, if you will. But no Good Brothers this week. And that is going to bring us into the wrestling of it all. We're going to kick it off with Sunday night's TakeOver WarGames. I can't get my voice that deep, man. I can't do it. But no, this was a really, really good pay-per-view. It was very Vince NXT, if that makes sense, where it felt like something that Vince was like, no, this is a Sunday night pay-per-view. I need to like have a hand in what's going on. And you could kind of see his fingerprints and feel his influence throughout a couple of the matches. The one that was definitely the clunkiest was the women's War Games match, which kicked off the show. This was like called Spot Palooza. You could hear the girls at one point counting down to like a big group move. There were moments where like Candice LeRae was laid out on the ring and grabbed like a steel chair and put it over herself so that like there was that spot to be done because I guess EO had forgotten to put the steel chair on Candice before climbing up to the top rope. There was all kinds of weird and just kind of segmented moments that felt like they would have been really cool at the time, but just felt strange in like watching it live. The end of that match came when Raquel Gonzalez pinned the NXT Women's Champion Io Shirai after snatching her out of the air and powerbombing her through a ladder. So at one point, there's a ladder positioned between the two rings inside the cage, and Io Shirai goes up for, I think it was a moonsault, or maybe it was like Kairi Sane's like elbow, a tribute kind of a thing. I can't quite remember, but Raquel basically grabs her like around the throat, hoists her up like old school Kane style, and puts her through the ladder, and then rolls her up for the pin. The reigning NXT Women's Champion. So that is going to lead to a really cool story, I think. And Raquel Gonzalez is immediately a main event player after this match, and is immediately a star. So that was really cool. We also had Tommaso Ciampa and Timothy Thatcher facing off in a 1v1 match. This was like every like pure grappling fan's dream. This match was insane. At one point, Timothy Thatcher just had Ciampa on his stomach and was just like cold cocking him in the neck, like right around the surgery area. That match ended with Ciampa like choking Thatcher in the ropes, getting to the 4 count, and then pulling him through the ropes into a Willow's Bell to get the finish, which the Willow's Bell happened around the time you actually stopped watching. It's his new finisher that he named after his daughter, and it's freaking cool. It's like an inverted DDT with their feet on the ropes. So it's like a seated DDT with their feet in the ropes. It's very cool. It looks wicked as hell, and that was dope. Do you have any thoughts on those first 2 matches?
With the women's match, it's disappointing to hear that it was a little clunky because just by knowing who's in that match, that sounded like a really, really good one. I expect it to maybe even be as good, if not better, than the women's War Games from last year. And I remember that one people were saying was the match of the weekend. Same weekend they gave us Survivor Series. I think one other big show might have been like a UK takeover or something, but that was a big, good match. But to see this one didn't really meet those expectations. Disappointing. I do like that they're putting their stock into Raquel Gonzalez because last time I saw her was when she just started being Dakota Kai's bodyguard, and she was already just excelling in that role really well. And she's a really great like like big bodyguard type of character. She played that role well as this imposing figure, and if she's going to springboard into the main event picture, then that's definitely a big good thing for her.
Yeah, she's definitely going to play a role as like the main foil for someone like a Charlotte Flair if she comes back down to NXT, which has been rumored recently, or like Rhea Ripley, who's currently in NXT right now. She is that perfect like you're a brute, I'm a brute. Let's just go in there and beat each other down kind of woman. And I'm really happy to see her get this opportunity and excel in it after such a long road trying to get to the WWE and get to a place where women's wrestling was taken seriously enough that Raquel Gonzalez was a required member of your staff.
100%. And with the Champa Thatcher match, first off on paper, that just sounds like a really good 1v1 match. I don't know if they ever faced off on the indies, but on paper that just sounds like a great knockdown, drag out, bro match. And judging by the way it ended, it was definitely that to me expectations. I hope. Was it a good match?
Oh man, this was probably my match of the night. Well, not even. It was my match of the night, which is going to give you a little bit of a spoiler for the way that the men's War Games match comes out. But yeah, no, this was insanely cool, and just it was such a good moment of just watching these two guys who have had their own long time on the indies and their own like paths to the WWE and taking their time getting to where they're at and being able to perform on the biggest stage available to them at the top of their game and just kill it was really, really cool. So continuing on with that night, we had Johnny Gargano beating Damian Priest and the North American champion Leon Ruff for the North American Championship. So since there's a bit of backstory that needs to come in with this one, since Halloween Havoc, Candice and Johnny, mostly Johnny, have had a lot of matches kind of helped to go their way by these like mysterious ghost face kind of guys. So it's like people in like black robes with the ghost face from Scream mask on. They come in, they'll like DDT an opponent or they'll hit someone with a kendo stick and they'll drop out of the ring and disappear. And then the person in the ring from the Gargano family will kind of roll them up and take the victory. So there's like 7 ghost faces that end up making an appearance during this match. The last one who makes an appearance has a lead pipe in his hand and just beats Damian Priest over the back with the lead pipe until Johnny Gargano is able to roll him up and secure the victory. After he gets the victory and he gets the title back, the Ghostface goes to take off his mask, and it's Austin Theory. So that was and that reveal didn't really do anything for me. The promo that was cut directly after the reveal was great. The promo was Austin grabs the mic and he goes, it was me all along, Austin." So he did the Vince McMahon Austin promo, which was great. That cracked me up. That made me break. That was awesome. I don't like Austin Theory. He's a very talented wrestler with a very shitty personal life that's very, very public. And if you want to look it up, you can. Be forewarned, it gets disgusting really, really fucking quick. So, the longer we could have gone without that guy on my TV screen, fantastic, phenomenal, and go for it. But he's in the WWE and he's pretty, so they're going to put him on TV. It was bad.
So there's a little bit to unpack there, I guess. I guess I'll start with Gargano winning the belt back, which I guess it's fine, I guess, because like we talked about this, like we expected Leon Ruff to have a short reign, so but the fact that he took it to TakeOver at least, I'm kind of surprised about. Like I feel like we talked about that like a month ago, and I expect him to lose the belt within about a week. It was just like a happy, cool moment, but quickly pass the belt back to Gargano or someone else within the week. But the fact he took it that far, that's impressive, I suppose. The Ghostface thing is weird. Like maybe, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say the Ghostface thing felt a little long in the tooth the week after Halloween Havoc. The fact that they milked it all the way to December for an Austin Theory reveal is just. I mean, at that point, bring someone huge down from like Raw or SmackDown. Like, have it be Sami Zayn, and he like takes off the Ghostface mask, and it's the Generico mask, and everyone thinks, "Oh my God, Generico's back! That's incredible! He's gonna beat down Johnny Gargano." And then he takes off the Generico mask, and it ends up, "Oh, it's been Sami Zayn the entire time." Like, that's cool. That would have been worth a 2.5 month build to nothing. Like this, I don't know. You know how I feel about this. I'm gonna let you talk.
Right, that would have been a great reveal though. So I'll give you credit there for booking that. The Ghostface thing is I can't see how that could be interesting because I feel like with a mass reveal, like you said, it's gotta be a big reveal. But if your mass person is a person who only a certain subsection of the NXT audience is going to know because they haven't been implemented on television that well, that sounds like it could backfire too easily. But and also just disappoint audiences at home. But hey, if this is a goal just to add tower reigns to Johnny Gargano if he's not leaving NXT anytime soon. Gives him and Candice LeRae bodyguards, I guess. And I'm not crazy about it, but
All right, and that'll bring us to the men's War Games match. This one was better than the women's War Games. It was also longer. Uh, not in a good way. It was longer. So this, just to remind you and the people watching, was Pat McAfee's team, which is Pat McAfee, the Brit Am Brawlers, and Pete Dunne facing off against the Undisputed Era. You know the Undisputed Era. This was pretty Spot Monkey-esque, but with like McAfee being on the receiving end of a lot of the bumps, which was cool to see. They're not really pulling any punches. They're making him take the bumps and prove that he's worthy and willing to be in there with these like 7 guys that are just legends in their own right, young legends in their own right. At this point, there was one point in the match where McAfee, who had been out of the match for a minute, climbs up the cage onto the rafters above and then does a not a moonsault because it was frontward facing, but almost a full swanton bomb onto the other 7 guys, knocking out his team and the Undisputed Era. After that is when the finish came because Kyle O'Reilly kind of is the first to wake up out of a daze doing his whole Kyle O'Reilly shtick, finds Danny Burch and pins him 1, 2, 3. Undisputed Era are the winners of War Games 2020.
well, first off, shout out to Pat McAfee for taking all of the what sounds like the biggest bumps of the match. Like, definitely proved me wrong as far as like a non-wrestler being in a wrestling environment. He's definitely trying to earn his stripes, it sounds like. So, shout out to him for being willing to take those stripes. The War Games match it sounds just as, if not more disappointing than the women's match, if it's not a little better. And my only worry there is that it might just be because 2 War Games matches in one night is starting to be overkill. I don't know if they've done, well, last year obviously, but I don't remember it being as strenuous in 2 War Games matches. But if this is going to be a tradition, do you think that they're doing too much by having 2 War Games matches every year in one night?
I think knowing in the same way that Hell in a Cell is coming, the Royal Rumble's coming, Tables, Ladders, and Chairs is coming. Like, these events are coming right at the end of the year. Knowing that War Games happens in December is the detriment to War Games because the first one came out of nowhere. It was like, hey, we have the rights to War Games. We're going to use it. And they did it, and it was incredible. And then the second was like, oh, wait, we're getting close to when that was last year. This is going to be incredible. And now we're on to the 4th or the 5th, and the Undisputed Era have been in like 3 of them. And a very small sample size, they've been in a majority. So I think the same way that I think Hell in a Cell shouldn't be an event, but should be a match that shows up on any event, I feel like War Games shouldn't be an event. It should be a match that can be built to and brought in. So, like, you have these faction warfare things that NXT has been trying to kind of get off the ground for a while that New Japan does better than they do, where they just allow the factions to grow and the stories to be told within the faction, and they're not teasing a breakup every 20 minutes. If we get to that point with NXT where you've got the Undisputed Era, who maybe Adam Cole is the only founding member who's still in the Undisputed Era, but they're still the Undisputed Era because that's what they're called. And there's, all these young guys, and those kind of, comings and goings are kind of just baked into NXT. Maybe War Games being a yearly thing and like a faction warfare kind of deal will make more sense. But just throwing together these teams because it's time for War Games, and that's what you have to do around this time of the year. It bothers me personally.
I agree with you there, and I'm worrying that like that oversaturation, people are going to sour on it in the same way people sour on Elimination Chamber and Hell in a Cell. Like, you get less excited for it because there was a time when people announced the Hell in a Cell or Elimination Chamber or even the first NXT War Games. Like, I remember they didn't name the next takeover event. They just had a big spiel with 2 factions. Then William Regal did his thing. We're gonna do War Games, and place went nuts. Internet went nuts, and that was a great moment. But when you detour away from that, and you not only make that like a mandatory event, but you make an event where you see two of those matches in the same night, it starts to lose its luster. And it sounds like this year it kind of lost its luster a little bit.
No, definitely. It's one where it you hate to say it, but it is true. It's a show they could have done without this year, honestly. Like all of those matches were good. They were very good and they were all deserving of being on takeovers, but the fact that like the two War Games matches kind of got tacked onto either end and kind of diluted the two or three matches we had in the middle, it diluted the entire night. And that's going to bring us into NXT proper for this week. The show opens with the Prince, Finn Balor, making his return. He's been out for like 3 months after breaking his jaw. So he's making his big return. He's in the ring. He's saying, the Prince is back. We're ready to go. Let's go. Who wants to fight me? Pete Dunne's music hits. He comes out. He wants to fight. Kyle O'Reilly's music hits. He comes out. He wants to fight. Damian Priest's music hits. He comes out. He wants to fight. They're all like kind of bickering in the ring, trying to call out Finn Balor. Finn makes this comment basically saying like, you all think you're deserving of a title or of a fight. You all think you're deserving of my in-ring return. You're not. The only person who can make a match for me is William Regal. He starts to walk up the ring, and that's when Karrion Kross's music hits. Karrion Kross has been out since he got injured at TakeOver 31, I believe, where he won the NXT title from Keith Lee in Keith Lee's farewell match and then immediately had to abdicate it because he got injured. So Karrion Kross's music hits and Scarlett Bordeaux comes down, now known just as Scarlett, and she makes a challenge to the Prince, says that we would love the opportunity to get in the ring and scrap. We would love the opportunity to make you hurt. We would love the opportunity to break your face again. The Prince accepts Scarlett's challenge and leaves the ring. So we go from William Regal's the only one who can make my matches to, yeah, okay, I'll fight Karrion. That's fine. Let's do that. That sounds like fun. So it was a good bit of heel work of like, you're all deserving, but I don't want to fight you. I'm going to let the boss make the match. And then, oh, wait, no, him I want to fight. I'm going to fight him. Y'all can go away. So that was really, really good.
I do like that. Like, well, first I should say that I'm kind of surprised Finn Balor has still been champion all this time with the injury 3 months. Like, I was even just about to ask, like, what was the NXT title match? Because I forgot who is even the champion. But, like, I guess with COVID, you don't have to travel. You don't really necessarily need to vacate belts. So I guess that's fine. But with two big returns in one night, that's, for one thing, Finn Balor versus Karrion Kross is going to be a whopper of a match whenever that happens.
Oh, yeah.
Two, that the way they laid out that promo actually makes perfect sense to me. It definitely fits in the character of Finn Balor too, and also adds to the lure of Karrion Kross, I think. Like, you get Finn Balor with this new rechristened pseudo heel face character saying, I don't think any of you guys are worthy, but if my boss wants to book the match, I'll fight you. But then you have Karrion Kross, it really adds to that aura around him. Like, oh, I'm not gonna say no to Karrion Kross. I want that match. So for them to lay out like that, I think it's gonna go a long way in building excitement for that match.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's going to be one that is just immediately all eyes are glued to NXT if they give it away for free. Or, a bunch of people are going to be signing up for a WWE Network subscription if it ends up being on the next TakeOver. Wherever they put that match, it's going to make money, and that's going to be really exciting. But speaking of the revitalization of feuds and the returning of superstars, we had Killian Dane and Pete Dunne facing off again after putting their rivalry on hold for several months. I believe Killian Dane had like a visa issue, and then there was also the COVID of it all, because he was doing things. Well, actually, no, because he was doing things with Rockstar Spud, whose name I can't remember, his NXT name I can't remember. He was doing like a tag team shtick with him not that long ago, but that also kind of speaks to that whole bit that I can't remember that he was even on NXT at all. So, for the better part of the quarantine, he's been there, but not really doing much of anything. They beat the shit out of each other. This was a fantastic match. And it makes me so happy that Dane isn't like sitting up at not Impact, sitting up at SmackDown, just at catering, waiting for something to be given to him. Like the fact that he is down in NXT where he's comfortable and working with guys that he worked with back in Britain and just killing it is super cool to see for me.
He's always been like a really fun big guy. Whoever you put in the ring with him, he's almost guaranteed to deliver. And I remember some of his stuff with Pete Dunne, and they definitely delivered when they had their feud. So I can only imagine them just picking up where they left off here.
Yeah, no, it was definitely cool to see how everything went down. And that is actually going to bring us over to AEW where Sting appeared and calls out Cody. So he's in the ring with Cody and they're kind of talking back and forth, just chatting shit. Uh, there's a long reign, or not reign, there's a long history now of legends making debuts in AEW and immediately just disrespecting Cody and being an asshole and immediately being like, no, you are the reason that I had to come here. You are the reason that I am here. Which, with Sting appearing to be in his vigilante kind of character, makes a lot of sense. There's no direct reasoning yet that's been made why Sting has appeared in AEW and signed a contract and kind of kept up this vigilante character from TNA in the promotion. It could be that it's all tying together with the Kenny Omega thing and the eventual TNA reunion pay-per-view that was supposed to go on during WrestleMania weekend that ended up getting pushed to next year. That could just be some long-term storytelling there. Either way, it was a great promo. I would seek it out if I were you. It was really, really good. But yeah, Sting's back on TNT, baby.
All right, and it's definitely got me curious to see what that reason could be. Like immediately in my head, I'm curious if it has anything to do with his history with Dusty Rhodes, which I'm not 100% sure if they had for you back in the day, but I know they were in NWA around the same time or WCW around the same time. So I wonder if anything from the past could tie into the future or present, I should say. And
Hmm.
if so, I think that could be interesting to have like a callback in that way.
Yeah, no, definitely. If that is where they're going, but they do seem to be going with a Dusty Rhodes kind of shtick on a different part of the show, and that's going to bring us actually over to the Dark Order. The Dark Order have been kind of pursuing members of the Nightmare family, extended family, and trying to get them to join. At first, they were after QT Marshall. Now they're after Cody's older brother, Dustin. Evil Uno is down in the ring. He's telling Dustin that he is the third most important Rhodes in AEW. Behind Cody, behind Brandy, and the fourth most important Rhodes in the history of TNT behind his father. He says that if he wants to be good again, if he wants to see his career revitalized, if he wants to be a champion, he should do the right thing and he should join the Dark Order. He reaches out his hand to shake Dustin's hand. Dustin feigns like he's going to do it and then just slaps the shit out of him. It was a good segment. There was a moment where Evil Uno says that his number is going to be number 7 because he's the 15th person to be brought in. It was weird.
Oh. Okay, when you said 7, I immediately called back to, I might be getting his name wrong, but he was like, when he came from WWE, WCW, wasn't he like white face paint with his name was 7 or something?
That actually makes a lot more sense. Yeah, that
Okay.
is exactly what that callback is, and I just completely missed it because Evil Uno explained it away with some stupid Dark Order comedy bullshit, and I was like, oh, that's funny. It makes no sense, but that's funny. But yeah, no, the fact that he would be 7 again on TNT makes so much more sense. Yes, that is why that is, and we're gonna leave all that in, aren't we? Because you're a bastard.
Yes, we are. You know me too well at this
Ah,
point.
damn it. Yeah.
But that's an amazing callback. But to their credit, it does make sense why they would go after Dustin Rhodes, because from what did see of the Dark Order, they went after a lot of people who were either jobbers or just overlooked on the roster. So it makes sense to go after a guy like Dustin Rhodes. I do wonder if, like, I'm not sure if like it would make sense to see anybody join Dark Order if Dark Order haven't done anything significant. Like obviously the biggest thing they've done so far is having Brody Lee be the TNT champion, but if I remember correctly from what you told me, he only had the belt for like a month before it went right back to Cody, and we haven't really talked about them too much since then, aside from I think you said Rusev won. I mean, Miro went to the Dark Order. Aside from that, it doesn't seem like they've done anything to really draw people in. Like I can't imagine any because like if you don't have any gold, don't have any significance in the main event picture, I don't see why anyone would want to be in the Dark Order.
Yeah, that's kind of the joke going on online right now is that like, oh, join the Dark Order, we'll make sure you don't suck, but all they do is lose. It's a bit of like self-aware comedy, which I get, but also you have an issue where you're gonna start running into problems of, you keep having these guys lose, you keep having these guys be those people who, come in and job out, and then what's the point of actually going in and like joining that organization? You're booking yourself into a corner before you even really had a chance to get the thing moving.
Yeah, and I feel like them going for the self-aware comedy just like a step backwards because very early on in Dark Order's history, they were already viewed as a joke, especially after the whole New Year's Eve fake punch thing. They already
Oh,
viewed it as a joke.
jeez.
But then when Brody Lee came in, it immediately legitimized the group in a way like, oh, this is a group that can be taken seriously. And now they're even more taken seriously because they've got the TNT title on their hands. And I'm assuming that may have helped their look in the eyes of the fans for a while. But if they're going back to like the self-aware comedy, failing to bring people in or anyone who matters into the Dark Order, then it's like 2 steps forward, 5 steps back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I do think that is something they're gonna have to like figure out, because if you watch all the online stuff, like the being the elite and all of their like AEW Dark, the Dark Order is hilarious and they do really good stuff. They've had one comedy skit on TNT and that's really it. And the rest of the time they've been losing. Even, John Silver, who was in a very strong match on the last pay-per-view, ended up losing. So it's a bit of a, I understand why they're booked to lose so much, but you got to start giving them some wins, or you just got to break them apart and do something different. So here's the appearance that we've been waiting to talk about all night. Shaq appears on AEW and is being interviewed. So they're going for like an HBO Real Sports with Brian Gumble kind of feel to this interview. They're in leather armchairs. They're sitting very politely. It's a very quiet, calm interview. And then Brandy comes in from the side and throws a glass of water in his face. When she does that, he just kind of looks at her and just starts laughing, like on screen, just chuckling to himself because it's hilarious. It was a super weird segment. It's not clear if they're building to a Brandy Rhodes Jade Cargill match or if they're building to a Shaq match. Shaq's great return to the ring after he was on, what was it, like WrestleMania 25 that he was
It
on?
was, I think it was like later than that. I want to say like 31, 32, something like that.
Either way, it's super weird. It's not real clear where they're going with the feud. It gets Shaq off the couch and onto TV, so that's cool, I guess. Meh. It was
Yeah.
it was a thing.
So like on one hand, I still think it's weird they're even doing anything with Shaq, but like I guess with the NBA coming back as of this recording today with like the preseason, and Shaq's gonna be, inside the NBA, the pre-show talk show. So I guess that gives them more of that TNT crossover visibility. If you could have Wednesday night AEW or Cody make an appearance on Inside the NBA or something like that. So I guess that makes sense. But it's one thing I am worried about, like besides just the insanity of a Shaq versus Cody match, is just you're putting so many baskets in the Cody character. He's got a thing with Sting. Now he's got a thing with Shaq. And I think you were saying when Sting debuted, he was getting beat down by Taz and his crew. So that
Hmm.
means Cody's in like three storylines at the same time, which I get AEW presence, a big on-screen figure in his own rights. It's to be in a segment with Cody is a big deal on AEW TV, but it's if you're giving him all of the big major storylines, then it's no different than when we used to make fun of the McMahons popping up every single segment on WWE TV. It gets annoying and it's another case of someone losing their luster because you're overusing them.
No, absolutely. It's definitely one of those like, at the start of AEW, it was like, oh man, Cody's gonna be on this card. That's gonna be insane. I can't wait to see him wrestle live. And now it's like, oh, it's Cody again. Okay, yeah, it's like when you would have like your own like Fed with all of your wrestling figures, and then you had like the one like Rescue Ranger toy that was like supposed to be you, and you ended up always winning the world title. It feels like that. It feels like AEW is just like Cody's like bin of just discarded toys that he's just mashing together in a wrestling ring until he wins. It's frustrating.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy though.
I appreciate that. So Kenny Omega, the current AEW World Champion, appears on this episode of AEW. Shocker there, I know. What's interesting and hilarious is he delivers word for word the exact same promo that he delivered on Tuesday night on Impact Wrestling. Word for word, it's the exact same promo. I'm not sure if this was just a drop ball or if this is just incredible heel work, but if it is incredible heel work, it's hilarious. And if it's a drop ball, that's even funnier. Like the fact that he just comes out and says like the exact same thing about like there's a lot of promotions out there. I might want to come back and get the Impact World title. I might want to come back and be Impact X Division champion. I might want to come back and win a tag title with some guy off of Dark that I just decide is going to be my partner, you know, all of this stuff. And he just came in and just delivered the exact same thing to the AEW audience about the Impact titles. It was amazing.
Did they acknowledge it on commentary? Like, oh, this sounds exactly the same thing he said
Mm-mm.
yesterday. Hmm.
They did not. It went over, and that was it. That was the whole thing. It was super weird, but also amazing at the same time. It's one of those that you kind of have to watch to believe and like hear the way he delivers it to get why it was so good. But it was so good.
Yeah, it might be something I'll have to just hunt down because it just sounds kind of weird. And I'm not sure if that was like intentional or just
Hmm.
like we're not sure if the AEW audience watched Impact, so just going to deliver the same thing verbatim. Just odd. Did anything come out of the Impact thing or Impact appearance anyway?
He did the interview with Josh Matthews and delivered that promo, and then went on his merry way. That was the end of it. There,
Oh,
he didn't even appear in the ring because the Impact episode had already been filmed and sent to Access TV. Like Impact's done with their tapings for the year, so this was just filmed with Josh Matthews, Don Callis, and Kenny in a bus that could have been anywhere really. It might have just been filmed outside of the AEW live show on Wednesday night and then sent to Impact. But it was the three of them in there, and just they did beat on uh Josh Matthews verbally for like 2 or 3 minutes, saying that it's clear from the tone of his voice and how he asks question and what a little weasel he is that he was trained in the WWE and he learned how to be a commentator in the WWE because he's a bad commentator and he sucks and he's awful and all this kind of stuff. While also saying, yeah, I might show up, I might win the Impact title. It's not like it's a real world title, like all kinds of crap like that. It was very good heel work. It was very out of place for the pace of that show.
okay. So now it kind of makes sense because like that is something that crossed my mind like after we stopped recording, like because I know Impact always does their tapings like they might tape 5 shows back to back a month or two in advance. So I was wondering how they were going to do that if they had taped stuff with Kenny Omega like a month or two ago and he was going to come in, but it seems like it was just a pre-recorded thing, which is fine. And if he did do the same promo verbatim, that might just be a case of we can't do something too big on Impact or AEW right now because we need to film new stuff for Impact. Like if they film new Impact tapings tomorrow and they plan to have AEW wrestlers on there in the tapings and hey that makes sense why he can't like drop a huge bomb like I want to wrestle the X Division champion next week. So it's still stuff that needs to be taped. I'm assuming that's the case.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it came off to me as well, is that it was like, hey, we're kind of in a corner here where AEW is live and Impact is not. So this is just the best you're going to get for now. And hopefully, when Impact comes back for the new round of tapings in the new year, we're able to get some new and interesting kind of matchups that way. But the main event for AEW on Wednesday night was MJF facing off with Orange Cassidy and for the Dynamite Diamond Ring. MJF ends up beating Orange Cassidy with Miro's help. So Miro comes down and just beats the shit out of Orange Cassidy. Just like ragdolls him around the ring and just destroys the guy. So MJF is a two-time back-to-back winner of the Dynamite Diamond Ring. So he's continuing to build the legacy of that ring, and whoever does eventually beat him is going to immediately be like a top star in that company. So that's really exciting long-term storytelling to continue keeping an eye on.
I guess that's a good point there. Like I was gonna like say it's disappointing. I guess on some level it is disappointing to just have him win the ring 2 years in a row. But if it's a case of him just building a legacy of him just being undefeated whenever the ring is online or whenever there's a diamond tournament final, then I guess that could work in the future. I am curious to see where this mirror thing goes. Is Miro still in the Dark Order?
I don't think Miro was ever actually in the Dark Order. I think he was being recruited at one point, but didn't end up like coming into the organization, I guess is the way you would call it, the faction, whatever. But most recently, he's been kind of working with Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford, which neither of them were on this week. So he just showed up with MJF kind of out of nowhere and beat him down. So I don't know if that's an indication that Miro is going to end up joining the inner circle, or that MJF just paid him kind of the way that, excuse me, kind of the way that the inner circle paid Jeff Cobb to appear and beat up Cody like almost a year ago now. It seems like it's more kind of one of those things where Miro's just sort of a floating mercenary kind of guy who will come in and beat someone up just because that's who needs to be beat up at that moment for him to get paid.
Well, in that case, I think that is a good role for him. If he just is like the paid mercenary like that, I
Hmm.
think that fits with him. If not character-wise, definitely like build-wise. Like you'd want a guy like that working for you to beat people up. So I guess that makes sense. And I guess like a feud between him and Orange Cassidy, either directly or just on behalf of MJF, that could be fun. Just because you've got this big brute taking on this not a comedy wrestler, but a guy who doesn't take everything seriously. And when you're in the ring with a 350 pounder, he might need to take that seriously. So I'm curious to see where that goes for future episodes.
Yeah, no, definitely, because it is interesting because Orange Cassidy has been getting slowly more serious. You know, he had that feud with Chris Jericho that seemed to snap something in his head of like, oh, okay, I need to be here, I need to focus in and do this, which led to him winning that Mimosa Mayhem match, I think is what it was called, where they had to wrestle and then throw the opponent into the vat of orange juice. But that was like the first moment that you saw him like wake up and like actually wrestle like at his full speed, which drove people insane. So this is another kind of one of those like stops on the train of like, okay, no, you need to show up, you need to work. And that's going to be a really interesting way, especially if this ends up leading to like a rematch in 6 months or a year's time at a pay-per-view main event, and MJF holds the world heavyweight title, or maybe Miro holds the world heavyweight title, and Orange Cassidy finds himself as the number one contender, and then that's like that their first interaction in the ring since this match. I think that's going to be a really interesting story to tell, and that'll bring us over to New Japan Pro Wrestling, where the World Tag League 2020 finals have been set and the Best of Super Juniors 2020 finals have been set. The finals for the World Tag League are going to see the 2019 champions Juice Robinson and David Finlay, who finished off with a record of 6-3, facing against Bullet Club's Gorillas of Destiny, who also finished with a record of 6-3. That's not where this gets interesting. Where it gets interesting is the Best of Super Junior finals, where the 2018 winner Hiromu Takahashi, who made his return after just a gruesome neck injury that had him out for over a year, finished with a 7-2 record, and he'll meet the one half of the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Champions El Desperado, who also finished with a 7-2 record. Why this is interesting is that one of Hiromu's only two losses came at the hands of El Desperado. So El Desperado has the victory over him already in the tournament and is facing him in the final. This is going to be an insane match.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of history there that I think could make for definitely emotional investments, and just knowing what those two guys can do in the ring, I know for a fact it's going to be a fun match, so that's going to be a good one.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's going to be super, super cool just because, like, Hiromu, even though he's been back for over a year now and he's been in these incredible matches with people like Will Ospreay, with, like, oh goodness, Roosh, who had like a brief time in New Japan, with guys like El Desperado, he still hasn't looked like his full Hiromu self. Like, he hasn't been able to go full bore, full crazy, like just out of his mind. Like, I don't care about my body. Like, let's put it on the line. And I think this is where you're going to see that kind of old school Hiromu come out and really shine again. Is this match against El Desperado?
Nice. Hopefully that's the case, and hopefully he doesn't go too crazy because I don't want him to break his neck again. But
Yeah.
fingers crossed there.
Absolutely. And that's actually going to be where we end the wrestling segment. That's going to bring me to my indie watch list. It was a short one this week. I know there wasn't a lot of good wrestling. This week's indie watch list is actually going to be GCW Slime Season, which was streamed free on their YouTube channel. It's a charity stream that they did. Every bit of merch that's bought, I think, through the end of December for GCW, every bit of money that's donated goes directly to the wrestlers that were on the card who have not been able to compete in shows across the country because they are being safe and home with the COVID and everything. There were two matches that I think, if you see nothing else this week in the world of wrestling, you need to seek these out. So you had Jordan Oliver facing off with Chris Bay. Jordan Oliver, obviously 1/3 of Injustice over in MLW, and Chris Bay, the current reigning and defending X Division champion for Impact Wrestling. They had an insane match. Jordan Oliver very regularly makes like headlines on Twitter with these crazy gifs of him doing these like insane chain wrestling things that end up looking more like a gymnastics competition than a wrestling match. This match is no different. And then the other match that I think you'd really be interested in is Blake Christian versus Leo Rush. That was cool. That was really, really cool.
Do I know who Blake Christian is? I don't remember the name at least.
So Blake Christian's a younger guy. He's 23 years old. He made his debut in 2017, but he's just kind of skyrocketed. He is one of those kind of Jordan Oliver-esque guys that'll just flip around the ring and kind of make your head go dizzy. So even if you're not super familiar with him or his work, or even familiar with him at all, I do think this Leo Rush match is one to go seek out, because Leo, especially indie Leo and not WWE Leo, is very much like the high flying, like doing the flips, the kicks, all of that kind of stuff kind of guy. And Blake Christian just sort of immediately feeds in to that style and kind of reciprocates it. He's also a New Japan US dojo candidate, so he's been on their New Japan Strong programming quite a bit recently.
Okay, I do love me some flips, so maybe I will have to check that out. But I guess that brings me to my segment. Is this a good time to get back into wrestling for anyone not watching right now? And I'll say no for the time being. Like, nothing this episode really got me too jazzed up, but like it's not in a way where I'm like, okay, nothing good this week. That means there's going to be nothing to offer in the future. But I feel like before you get to some good stuff, you're gonna get a slug every once in a while, and this might have been a week of a slug. But be it next week, be it a week after, I feel like there's going to be more stuff to come with the AEW Impact situation, or even with the Shaq situation, which is so bananas to me still. Even the fact that even if all he did was get sprayed with water, I just think it's nuts that he was on AEW TV. So if that gets us closer to Cody versus Shaq, or Shaq versus anybody in AEW, then hey, keep that something to keep an eye on. So that's pretty much the consensus. Like, nothing too exciting this week, but there's stuff to keep an eye on in a way that maybe you should keep watching in the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is definitely a bit of a down week, just in terms of like the match output was good. It just, there wasn't anything that really jumps off the page and says I need to go and seek that out. Uh So, it's definitely one where you're better off just spending the 55 minutes with us and letting me tell you about it and then saving your time elsewhere. And that actually concludes our show. So thank you all so much for tuning in. You can follow me on Twitter at Gladen, Sam. That's GladenCommasam, and read my coverage of all things pro wrestling at dailyddt.com, sportskita.com, a lot of places. Honestly, if you go to my Twitter profile, you'll see where I'm posting and what I'm posting and all that fun stuff.
And you can follow me at WarGames on all the platforms, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. No one else has that handle. Trust me, nobody wants that handle. It's just me. So if you find it, it's probably me. And upliftunited.com, where you can find podcasts like this one in the podcast network and good articles that feature cool things like Marshall of House Matters, as you can see behind me. And I guess I'll also say if you want more podcast stuff with me specifically, I have a Patreon, patreon.com/jam. And if you just want to donate some basic money, Kofi, like all the money you give me is gonna be me funding stuff for Uplift United. So if you wanna give me stuff so I can have more funds to focus more on content creation for Uplift United and stuff like that, then that's appreciated.
Absolutely. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a rating and a review. It really helps us out. You can also follow the show on Twitter at LapScraps. That's LAPSEDGPS. And until next time, we
We
out.
out.